A man in a gray fleece vest stepped out of a white Honda Civic at a rest stop on Interstate 70, east of Indianapolis. It was a cold morning in early February 2025. He walked to a concrete trash enclosure near the eastern end of the parking lot. He crouched down. He placed a small waterproof bag behind the base of the enclosure. Then he stood up, stretched like someone who had simply stopped to use the restroom, and walked back toward his car. He never made it. 4 FBI vehicles converged on the parking lot within seconds. Agents in plain clothes and agents in tactical gear moved from multiple directions at once. The man turned, saw them coming, and stopped. He did not run. He raised his hands. His name was Daniel Marsh. He was 41 years old. He held a secret-level security clearance. He had worked for 12 years as a civilian acoustic systems engineer at Naval Surface Warfare Center in Crane, Indiana, one of the most sensitive defense installations in the United States. And for the previous 26 months, he had been selling classified submarine secrets to what he believed was the Chinese Ministry of State security. Every dead drop, every cryptocurrency payment, every encrypted message, the FBI had seen all of it. This is the story of how one of the most methodical counterintelligence operations in recent FBI history dismantled a spy ring from the inside out before a single classified document reached Beijing. The Naval Surface Warfare Center in Crane sits on more than 60,000 acres in south-central Indiana, deep in the rolling hills of Martin County. It is the third largest naval installation in the United States by land area. Most people who live within 50 miles have never set foot inside it. Many do not know it exists. The facility designs, tests, and maintains weapon systems, electronic warfare equipment, and the acoustic signature management systems used on the Navy's most advanced submarines. Acoustic signature is everything in submarine warfare. A submarine that can be heard is a submarine that can be found. A submarine that can be found can be destroyed. The engineers at Crane spend careers reducing the sounds that nuclear-powered vessels make, the hum of propulsion systems, the vibration signatures of hull coatings, the acoustic profiles of next-generation propulsor designs. This work is classified for obvious reasons. The difference between a detectable and an undetectable submarine can determine the outcome of a naval conflict before the first shot is fired. Daniel Marsh had spent over a decade working inside those programs. He had passed every background investigation. He had renewed his clearance without incident. He attended classified briefings. He accessed restricted databases. By every external measure, he was a trusted and unremarkable federal employee who drove 40 minutes each way to a job most people had never heard of. Before we go further, it is worth understanding what kind of person Daniel Marsh appeared to be to those who knew him. Colleagues who were later interviewed described someone methodical and detail-oriented, qualities that made him effective at his work and that, in retrospect, made him a more dangerous adversary. He was not someone who drew attention to himself. He did not complain loudly or make enemies. He was the kind of employee who gets overlooked precisely because he gives you no reason to look. He had a modest home in Bloomington, Indiana. He coached a youth soccer team for 2 seasons in the mid-2010s. He was not in financial distress in any way that would have been visible to his supervisors. No gambling problem on record, no divorce proceeding, no bankruptcy filing. The picture that emerged after his arrest was of someone who had been quietly nursing a grievance for years while presenting an entirely unremarkable face to the world. What his colleagues did not know was that sometime in the winter of 2022, Daniel Marsh had made a decision that would end his career, his freedom, and nearly his entire adult life. The first indication that something was wrong did not come from a tip, a wire, or a human source. It came from a spreadsheet. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service runs a continuous monitoring program across defense installations that tracks anomalous access patterns, employees who log into classified systems outside their normal workflows, who pull documents unrelated to their current assignments, or whose badge-out times correlate with unusual system activity. The program uses automated flags that surface low-probability behavioral combinations for human review. It is not infallible. It generates false positives regularly. Most flags are cleared within days. In March 2023, the ENS Analytics team at its Quantico offices flagged an access anomaly at NSWC Crane. A civilian engineer had badged out of a classified workspace on 3 consecutive occasions within 72 hours of major design review sessions for a propulsion systems program. The timing alone was not alarming. What caught the analyst's attention was the combination. The employee had also accessed documents outside his primary project area on each occasion, querying files related to hull coating acoustic dampening specifications for Virginia-class submarines. His own assignment did not require those files. The analyst wrote up a preliminary report. NCS opened a preliminary inquiry. Within 6 weeks, as the inquiry developed, Ness contacted the FBI's Indianapolis field office. The FBI took over the investigation in May 2023 under a counterintelligence umbrella, assigning the case to a specialized squad that handled foreign intelligence threats in the Midwest. Investigators included special agents from the Indianapolis Counterintelligence Squad working in coordination with the FBI's Counterintelligence Division at FBI headquarters in Washington. The early surveillance phase was patient and deliberate. Agents did not move on Marsh immediately. They watched. They built a pattern of life. They documented his routes, his habits, his personal contacts, his digital footprint. They obtained legal process under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to monitor certain communications. They analyzed years of his access logs at Crane. Surveillance teams rotated personnel and vehicles on a schedule designed to prevent Marsh from registering the same face or the same car twice in a week. They noted which gas stations he used, which grocery store, which route he preferred on the 3 alternate roads between Bloomington and the Crane facility. They noted when he deviated. They noted when he did not. What they found gradually was a picture of a man living a double life. I spent time going through everything that has become publicly available from this case. The criminal complaint, the indictment, the plea documents, and the sentencing memoranda. One detail kept nagging at me throughout. Marsh did not appear to have been recruited in any traditional sense. He appeared to have initiated contact himself. According to documents filed in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Indiana, Marsh had used an encrypted messaging application to reach out to a contact he believed was affiliated with Chinese intelligence in late 2022. The court filings described the initial contact as originating with the defendant. He was not approached by a foreign intelligence service. He went looking. This changes the psychological profile entirely. A recruited spy can sometimes be understood through the lens of vulnerability, financial pressure, ideological manipulation, romantic entrapment. Marsh did not fit that frame cleanly. The documents describe a man who, for reasons that would not become fully clear until his sentencing, had decided that the United States government had treated him unfairly, and that he was owed more than he was getting. The exact nature of those grievances was aired at sentencing. But the decision to act on them, to cross from resentment into espionage, was his alone. By the time FBI surveillance was fully operational in mid-2023, Marsh had already made at least 2 exchanges with what he believed was a Chinese Ministry of State security handler. Those early exchanges had involved lower-level technical documentation, but investigators could see from his access patterns that he was systematically working toward more sensitive material. The FBI faced a decision. They could arrest Marsh on the basis of what they already had. The early exchanges alone were potentially sufficient for charges. But the counterintelligence calculus was different from ordinary criminal calculus. Arresting Marsh at that stage would expose only what he had already done. It would not reveal the network he believed he was operating within, the communication infrastructure he was using, or how deep the potential compromise went. It would also alert any actual Chinese intelligence operatives who might be watching the case peripherally. The decision, made in coordination between the Indianapolis field office, FBI headquarters, and the National Security Division of the Department of Justice, was to run a sustained false flag operation. A false flag counterintelligence operation is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of simply observing a subject's contact with a foreign intelligence service, agents insert themselves into that contact chain, replacing or supplementing the actual foreign handler with an undercover operative. The subject continues to believe they are communicating with their real handler. In reality, they are feeding information directly to the Bureau. The operation required a Mandarin-speaking undercover FBI agent capable of portraying a sophisticated Ministry of State security officer. That agent, whose identity remains protected in court records referred to only as UCE-1 or Undercover Employee 1, would need to be credible enough to sustain contact with Marsh for an extended period without triggering suspicion. The agent would need to guide Marsh toward more serious material while maintaining the appearance of being a genuine intelligence professional with interests, tastes, and operational tradecraft consistent with the MSS. According to court documents, UCE-1 made first contact with Marsh through the same encrypted channel Marsh had been using. The initial exchanges were brief and careful. UCE-1 established credibility through detailed knowledge of Chinese intelligence operational conventions, used terminology consistent with known MSS communication styles, and demonstrated familiarity with the specific technical domains Marsh had been discussing. Marsh, according to investigators, showed no immediate suspicion. The surveillance team watched the first in-person exchange from a distance that, based on how it was later described in court proceedings, made hair stand up on the back of your neck. Marsh arrived at a park in a suburban Indianapolis community on a Tuesday afternoon in August 2023. He carried a reusable water bottle. He sat on a bench for approximately 11 minutes. He left without appearing to interact with anyone. He left the water bottle. The water bottle had been hollowed out. Inside it was a sealed waterproof bag containing printed documents. The documents were classified. An FBI evidence recovery team retrieved the bottle within minutes of Marsh's departure. The recovery was conducted by a two-person team that had been positioned near the park entrance under the appearance of a couple on an afternoon walk. One agent photographed the bench area before approaching. A second agent recovered the bottle while the first maintained a visual on all entry and exit points. The entire retrieval took under 4 minutes. The documents were logged, photographed in situ, and transported to the field office for processing. A forensic examination confirmed that the printed pages matched specific files accessed in Crane as classified document management system under Marsh's credentials in the days prior. What's most surprising about this case isn't the audacity of the dead drops, it's how analog the whole operation was. Here was an engineer with sophisticated access to some of the most advanced acoustic technology in the world, and he was passing secrets in hollowed-out water bottles at suburban hiking trails. The MSS tradecraft guidance he had received, which the FBI now controlled, had directed him toward exactly this kind of physical dead drop methodology: no electronic transfer, no email, no digital handoff, paper, plastic, and parts. The counterintelligence team running the false flag operation quickly realized that this methodology, while inconvenient, was actually working in their favor. Every physical drop was a controlled event. The FBI knew the location in advance because UCE1 selected it. They could position evidence recovery teams and surveillance assets before Marsh arrived. They could document everything. The chain of custody was clean. Between August 2023 and early 2025, Marsh made 23 documented dead drops. Each one was collected by the FBI. Each one contained classified material. The documents ranged in classification level, but several were marked secret and contained technical specifications related to hull coating, acoustic dampening compounds, and propulsor design parameters for Virginia-class submarines. According to the government's sentencing memorandum, at least 7 of the documents Marsh provided contained information that, if obtained by a foreign adversary, would provide meaningful intelligence value regarding the acoustic detectability of active U.S. submarine platforms. The FBI did not allow any of this material to leave their control. The question of whether any actual information was ever received by Chinese intelligence was addressed directly in court filings. The government's position, affirmed by the sentencing judge, was that the false flag operation had successfully intercepted every exchange. No classified information passed through to a genuine foreign intelligence recipient. In exchange for the documents he was providing, Marsh received cryptocurrency payments routed through a series of intermediate wallets. UCE1, operating with FBI authorization and resources, facilitated these payments as part of the undercover operation. Over 26 months, Marsh received a total of approximately $180,000 in cryptocurrency, dispersed across multiple transactions in amounts designed to remain below reporting thresholds and to appear consistent with the payment patterns of a genuine intelligence operation. The cryptocurrency trail became one of the most technically demanding aspects of the case. FBI financial investigators worked with blockchain analytics specialists to map every transaction, not just the payments to Marsh, but the entire constructed payment infrastructure used by UCE1. The goal was to ensure that the payment chain was documented with sufficient precision to withstand defense challenges at trial. There is a line in the indictment that reads almost like fiction. It describes Marsh, in one encrypted exchange with UCE1, complaining that a particular payment had been lower than expected and asking whether his handlers were satisfied with the quality of the material. UCE1 assured him they were. The response was methodical, professional. A practice lie delivered by an FBI agent to a man who had chosen to sell his country's secrets for 6 figures in digital currency and who was complaining that he was being underpaid. The first major obstacle in the operation surfaced in the spring of 2024. Marsh began showing signs of operational paranoia. He varied his routes to dead drop locations. He started using counter-surveillance measures, driving past a location, continuing for several miles, then doubling back. He changed his dead drop timing from afternoons to early mornings. He sent a message to UCE1 through the encrypted channel, expressing concern that He might be under surveillance. He asked UCE-1 to verify his security. This was the moment the operation could have unraveled. If UCE-1 responded incorrectly, too quickly, too reassuringly, or with a detail that didn't align with Marsh's expectations of how an MSS handler would behave, it might push Marsh toward abandoning the operation entirely. If the surveillance footprint around the dead drop locations had been too heavy in recent weeks, it could trigger exactly the kind of panic that would shut everything down before the final, most serious exchange the FBI was working toward. UCE-1 and the counterintelligence team made a tactical decision. Rather than reassure Marsh immediately, UCE-1 imposed a deliberate communications pause of 11 days, no response, no acknowledgement. This was a technique borrowed directly from known MSS handling protocols. The deliberate silence used by real intelligence handlers to signal that the subject should sit tight and trust the process. When UCE-1 finally responded, the message was measured and authoritative. The handler expressed confidence in Marsh's security posture, attributed the delay to operational caution on the handler's end, and redirected the conversation toward the next exchange. Marsh accepted this. The operation continued. What that moment reveals is something about the psychology of someone in Marsh's position. He had chosen to become a spy. He had built an entire operational identity around this secret role. And when fear crept in, as it inevitably would, his need to believe he was safe, that the operation was real, that the relationship with his handler was genuine, overrode his instinct to walk away. He wanted to be reassured. UCE-1 gave him just enough to keep him in place. There was a secondary incident in July 2024 that appears in the case documents only briefly, but is worth noting. Marsh, apparently emboldened by the operation's continuity and anxious to demonstrate value, accessed a category of files at Crane that he had not previously touched, documents related to an active program rather than an archived one. The access triggered an internal security alert at the facility's document management system. A security officer at Crane reviewed the flag and, because Marsh's name had by that point been shared with facility security personnel under a carefully controlled need-to-know arrangement, the flag was quietly routed to the FBI rather than generating any internal inquiry that might have reached Marsh's supervisors. The moment illustrated both the risk of the ongoing operation and the degree of interagency coordination required to keep it running without Marsh's knowledge. By the fall of 2024, the FBI and the National Security Division were preparing to bring the operation to a close. The case file had grown to include documented evidence of 21 successful dead drops, a complete cryptocurrency payment ledger, extensive surveillance records, recorded encrypted communications, and the classified documents themselves, all preserved as evidence. Prosecutors at the NSD assessed the case as strong enough to proceed. The question was when and how to make the arrest. The counterintelligence team wanted one final exchange, not because they needed additional evidence. The existing record was overwhelming, but because the final exchange, if staged correctly, could capture Marsh in the act of placing a dead drop containing the most serious classified material he had yet provided. The sentencing weight of that final act, the deliberate, premeditated delivery of secret-level submarine propulsion specifications, would matter in court. UCE-1 tasked Marsh with obtaining and delivering specific technical documentation related to next-generation propulsor design modifications under active development at Crane. This was a carefully calibrated request. It was specific enough to require deliberate targeting by Marsh. He would have to make a conscious decision to access and extract material beyond anything he had provided before, but consistent enough with previous exchanges to avoid alarming him. Worth pausing here, would you have noticed the signs before it was too late? Put yourself in the position of Marsh's colleagues at Crane, people who worked alongside him every day, who attended the same briefings, who probably shared lunch with him in the facility cafeteria. He had a clearance. He had a job function that gave him legitimate reasons to access sensitive material. He behaved normally. There were no outward signs. The behavioral analytics program caught something his supervisors could not see, and even then, it took months to understand what it meant. This is the reality of insider threat cases. The most dangerous compromises often look like nothing at all from the outside. In January 2025, Marsh accessed a series of restricted files at NSWC Crane related to propulsor acoustic signature reduction protocols. He printed certain documents. He removed them from the secure facility during a badge-out event on a Tuesday afternoon. The access was documented. The badge-out was documented. Surveillance teams tracked his movements from the facility. Over the following weeks, Marsh assembled a package. UCE-1 had designated a dead drop location, a rest stop on Interstate 70 east of Indianapolis, at a concrete trash enclosure near the eastern end of the parking lot. The date was set. The morning of the final drop was a Thursday in early February 2025. Temperatures at the I-70 rest stop hovered just above freezing. A light wind was pushing across the open parking area. FBI surveillance teams had been in position since before dawn, staged in vehicles and on foot in configurations designed to look like ordinary travelers at a highway rest stop. A surveillance van occupied a slot near the western end of the lot, positioned for a clear sight line across the full parking area. 2 agents in a passenger sedan had been in place since 5:40 in the morning. A third element, a pair of agents in running gear near the facility building, could move on foot within seconds of a signal. Marsh drove his white Honda Civic east on I-70 from his home in Bloomington, Indiana. Surveillance teams tracked him from a distance throughout the drive. He had left home at approximately 6:45 in the morning, earlier than his normal departure for work. He was not heading to work. He had already called in and indicated he would be working remotely that day. He pulled into the rest stop at approximately 7:22 in the morning. He parked toward the eastern end of the lot. He got out of the car. He was carrying a small waterproof bag. He walked to the concrete trash enclosure. He crouched down. He placed the bag. He stood up, and the FBI moved. 4 vehicles converged simultaneously from different points in the parking lot. Agents in plain clothes who had been positioned near the building moved toward him from the south. A tactical element moved from the north. An agent in the parking lane blocked any vehicle egress. The entire arrest sequence, from the moment the first vehicle moved to the moment Marsh had his hands secured behind his back, took less than 30 seconds. Marsh did not resist. According to agents present at the arrest, he said almost nothing. He was advised of his rights immediately. He was transported to the FBI's Indianapolis field office. The waterproof bag he had placed at the trash enclosure was recovered and logged into evidence. It contained printed classified documents bearing secret markings, including technical specifications related to propulsor acoustic signature profiles on Virginia-class submarines. Daniel Marsh was charged that same day with multiple violations of the Espionage Act, specifically 18 U.S.C. Section 794, which covers the gathering or delivering of defense information to aid a foreign government. The criminal complaint filed in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Indiana laid out the full scope of the operation. 23 documented dead drops over 26 months, $180,000 in cryptocurrency payments, secret-level classified documents, and a sustained undercover false flag operation conducted by the FBI's Indianapolis field office in coordination with FBI headquarters and the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. The complaint also made clear, for the first time in any public document, that Marsh had never actually been in contact with the Chinese Ministry of State Security at any point during the operation. UCE-1, the Mandarin-speaking undercover employee who had acted as his handler throughout the entire 26 months, was an FBI agent. Every instruction Marsh received had come from the Bureau. Every payment he received had been authorized and disbursed by the Bureau. Every dead drop had been watched, documented, and collected by the FBI. For 26 months, Daniel Marsh had been a spy with no foreign principle. He had committed espionage in service of no one but himself in an operation he never suspected was a trap. Here's the take that'll probably get us some pushback. The $180,000 Marsh received from the FBI during the undercover operation should not be allowed to offset his culpability. And it is a genuine question whether the payments themselves created any meaningful entrapment argument. They did not. The courts have been consistently clear on this point, and Marsh's own initiation of the contact distinguished his case from scenarios where government operatives create criminal intent from scratch. But the optics of the FBI paying a spy to keep spying, even in a controlled false flag context, represent a real tension in how these operations are conducted. The counter-argument, and it is a strong one, is that the alternative, arresting Marsh early and allowing any actual MSS infrastructure to remain undetected, would have been worse for national security. The payments were the cost of understanding the full scope of what he had done. We think that trade-off was justified. Not everyone will agree. Following his arrest, Marsh was held without bond. The government argued successfully that he represented a serious flight risk given the nature of the charges and the cryptocurrency assets involved. His defense team initially indicated an intent to contest the charges, and pre-trial proceedings continued through the spring and summer of 2025. The defense explored several angles. They challenged certain aspects of the surveillance authorization and sought to suppress communications collected under FISA. Those motions were denied by the district court. They raised the entrapment question regarding the undercover operation, arguing that UCE1's prolonged engagement with Marsh and the substantial cryptocurrency payments constituted improper government inducement. The court rejected this argument, citing the documented evidence that Marsh had initiated contact, had continued the operation voluntarily, had sought out increasingly classified material on his own initiative, and had expressed on multiple occasions his desire to expand the scope of what he was providing. By the late summer of 2025, Marsh and his defense team entered into plea negotiations with federal prosecutors from the National Security Division. In October 2025, Daniel Marsh entered a guilty plea to 2 counts of violating 18 U.S.C. Section 794, specifically the delivery of national defense information with intent to injure the United States or to advantage a foreign nation. The plea was not a complete capitulation on sentencing. Marsh's attorneys submitted an extensive sentencing memorandum arguing for a sentence at the lower end of the applicable guidelines range, emphasizing that no classified information had ever actually reached a foreign adversary, that Marsh had cooperated to a limited degree with investigators following his arrest, and that his personal history included no prior criminal conduct. They presented character statements from family members and former colleagues who described him as a skilled engineer who had, in their view, experienced genuine workplace frustrations, though by whom those frustrations had been exploited, if not by Marsh himself. The memorandum was careful to leave somewhat vague. The government sentencing memorandum was detailed and unsparing. It laid out the specific classified documents involved, the calculated and sustained nature of the operation, the serious potential damage had the material actually reached Chinese intelligence, and what prosecutors described as Marsh's deliberate mercenary motivation. The government noted that Marsh had not been coerced, had not been manipulated into the first contact, and had expressed no remorse in any of his communications throughout the operation. In one encrypted exchange from late 2024, months before his arrest, Marsh had told UCE1 that he planned to keep going as long as the arrangement is productive. The government argued this was not the language of a man in crisis or under duress. It was the language of someone who had made a business decision to sell classified national security information. The sentencing hearing was held in February 2026 at the federal courthouse in Indianapolis. The judge, addressing Marsh directly before pronouncing sentence, made clear that the court considered the offense among the most serious that comes before federal courts, a deliberate betrayal of a security clearance, a position of trust, and an obligation to protect information entrusted to him by the United States government. The judge acknowledged the arguments in mitigation, but found them insufficient to justify the lower range the defense had sought. Daniel Marsh was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole under federal sentencing guidelines. He was also ordered to forfeit all cryptocurrency proceeds from the operation, approximately $180,000, and barred from any future federal employment or security clearance. Is this justice served or too little too late? 22 years for a man who spent over 2 years trying to sell submarine secrets to what he believed was a foreign adversary. The documents he passed never reached Beijing. But the intent was real, the effort was real, and the classified material he extracted from NSWC Crane was genuine. Every document he printed and placed in those waterproof bags represented a real security breach, even if the breach was contained. This case also had consequences beyond the sentence. The behavioral analytics program at NECS that first flagged Marsh's access anomalies has been cited publicly by defense officials as a model for insider threat detection at cleared defense facilities. The flag that triggered the initial inquiry, the correlation between design review events and anomalous document access, was not dramatic. It was a statistical pattern in a spreadsheet. It caught a spy. The false flag operation run by the FBI's Indianapolis field office was described in the government's sentencing memorandum as one of the most sustained domestic counterintelligence operations, targeting Chinese espionage efforts in the Midwest in recent years. The operation's success depended on patient surveillance, disciplined undercover work by UCE1, and a willingness to let it run long enough to build a case that could not be challenged on evidentiary grounds. The case also says something about how espionage targeting U.S. defense programs actually works now. The traditional image of a foreign spy, a handler in a trench coat at a diplomatic function, approaching a disgruntled official at a cocktail party, doesn't capture the modern reality. Marsh initiated his own contact. He sought out what he believed was a foreign intelligence connection using commercially available encrypted communications tools. He structured his own dead drops using operational security advice he had apparently researched or received through those channels. The barriers to entry for committing espionage have in some ways been lowered by technology, even as the FBI's ability to detect and monitor that activity has grown. One detail that stuck with me reading through the case documents. In the weeks after Marsh's arrest, investigators reviewed years of his personal communications and found evidence that he had been researching Chinese intelligence recruitment and tradecraft at least 18 months before he made his first contact. He had been thinking about this for a long time. He had in some sense been preparing. The decision was not impulsive. It was deliberate, researched, and calculated. And still, he walked directly into one of the most comprehensive counterintelligence traps the Indianapolis field office had ever constructed. There's a piece of this story that didn't fit into this episode's length, specifically the full internal review at NSWC Crane following Marsh's arrest, and what it revealed about the broader access control gaps his case exposed. Drop a comment with the word "more" if you want us to cover the security aftermath in a follow-up. The rest stop on Interstate 70, where Marsh was arrested, looks the same today as it did that February morning in 2025. Travelers pull in, stretch their legs, use the facilities, and get back on the road. The concrete trash enclosure near the eastern end of the lot has no marker. Nothing distinguishes it. But it is the place where a 26-month operation designed to protect the acoustic secrets of America's most advanced submarines reached its end, where a man who had spent years calculating the price of his betrayal finally discovered that the people he thought he was selling to had been watching him the entire time. Daniel Marsh will be in federal prison until at least his mid-60s. The submarine programs he targeted continue. The engineers at Crane continue their work. And the behavioral analytics system that first caught an anomaly in a spreadsheet in March 2023 continues to run every day across every cleared defense facility it monitors. If this case stays with you, if you want to understand more about how the FBI runs counterintelligence operations, how the Espionage Act works, or how cases like this one reshape defense security policy, there is more on this channel. We cover these cases in depth because they matter, and because the public record, when you dig into it, tells a story more precise and more extraordinary than anything invented. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you've followed a case like this one from the headlines and wondered what was actually happening beneath the surface, this channel exists for exactly that reason.